Welcome to When Men Open Up, a show where we are redefining manhood through transparency. My name is Dominique,
And I'm Dexter Peggins.
and today we have a great topic. Today's topic is suicide in the military. And this is a huge issue, a growing issue that's been addressed in so many different ways. And it's a very sensitive issue, very confusing issue for many, and it's a very complicated issue because there's so many different factors involved when it's surrounding this type of issue. But for those of you that join us for the first time, this is when men open up, and please share the broadcast. Please have everybody else that you know join in on this conversation, and please share it. But Dex, suicide in the military. This is a big issue, and it's growing. That's the thing. It's a growing issue. There's so many angles to address with this issue, but we're just gonna try to do our best with this. And those of you that are tuning in with us, give us some feedback as well. Give us some of your experiences, whether your prior service or if you do service. People in the military or veterans as well. Please weigh in on this. But man, what do you got to say about this issue right here, man?
It's it's rough. There's really no simpler way to say it. I was thinking about you and I are both prior service, both veterans, and I was kind of operating under the mindset that since I've got out the military, and that's been almost 7 years now. I was under the mindset that things had actually, were progressing, from the standpoint of, people getting the help, making that connection, kind of removing the stigma. And, when we were preparing for this particular topic, I was surprised to see that the actual suicide rates are the highest it's been in like 6 years.
Right.
I think there were some minor decreases amongst the veteran population, but for the most part, we're still talking about 20 service members a day, 20 veterans a day, and so it's alarming. What is the real issue? You and I had this conversation. When I joined the Army back in 1997. 3 days in the basic training. One of the trainees attempted suicide. So here we are, a bunch of 18-year-olds, kind of like, man, maybe he just wasn't mentally tough. We're just fresh out of our parents' house. We don't really know anything about being mentally tough ourselves. In hindsight, but the reality is that I remember how it was handled amongst the leadership, and if it would be handled in the same fashion today, you would say that these guys are out of their mind. There was no empathy, no concern. And that young man was processed out the military within 2 weeks. And so, like I said, that was 3 days into my military experience. And so, once again, the hope would be that some 20 plus years later, that we will make some tangible improvements in the way we deal with people. And I think for the most part we're having these conversations, but there's still some disconnect, and I think the struggle is identifying ultimately what's going on with people, that's causing them, and to really consider suicide as a viable option to whatever their situation is. And so hopefully, in this conversation, we'll have the opportunity to kind of dive into some of those things. But, I'm not on here, supposing that I have all of the solutions or all of the answers. It's just something that, we need to shine the light on. We also need to be advocates for this space, advocates for this conversation. And in doing so, hopefully, people start getting the help they need.
Most definitely, and it's a very loaded topic. There's so many, like I said before, there's so many areas that I want to address. We're both prior service. I think that's important for everyone to know. So again, we're speaking from experience, we're speaking from research, we're speaking from interviewing people, surveying people, and so forth. I have so many different thoughts about this. Even who knows, we may have to do a part two on this because we are prior service, but we'll just get on that, and you all let us know as well. But I feel like we have a lot of work to do. And when I joined, fresh out of high school, I think 2 months, uh, maybe a month and a half after I graduated, 18 years old in basic training, uh, I remember that environment and that space being very, very different.
Yeah.
And I also remember vividly, the drill sergeants that were in our unit and so forth, and all of them were had combat exposure. You get what I'm saying? All of them have been deployed at least once, many of them multiple times. And I remember in my mind, just with my understanding at 18, because I can verbalize it now, but when I was 18, I really couldn't put my finger on certain things. But I remember those guys being off.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Very, very off. And I remember the atmosphere being very, 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 very problematic. And I think a big issue within the military is the atmosphere is so off. We have a huge, huge misunderstanding when it comes down to masculinity, when it comes down to being mentally tough, when it comes down to mental health and so forth. And it explains why a lot of the initiatives that are trying to be implemented are just ineffective, and why this issue is really growing. So, for example, number one, I think the culture within the military, it influences this. That's what I'm seeing. That's what I've seen as well. I think, for example, when it comes down to seeking help, going to sick call, that's, those of you that understand that language is just going to the hospital, going to an appointment. Going to sick call was frowned upon.
Yeah, definitely.
And not just frowned upon, but I remember them actually singling you out if you went to sick call. So they'll say, "Hey, sick call's available," but then they'll create this stigma with going to sick call. That's laughing because he knows exactly what I'm talking about.
I'm laughing because I was one of the ones telling people you better not go to sick calls.
Exactly. So it's this culture because because it's sad, and I'm trying not to be all over the place because it's so loaded. It's sad because you have soldiers who did 10, 15, 20 years. And those that are about to get out, and all this is aligned as well, all this connected. The soldiers who have done that time and are about to get out, or have gotten out, how so many of them are trying to get their paperwork together.
Yeah.
And when I say paperwork together, I mean trying to get stuff documented that happened like since they got into basic training or within their first 5 years. So you got to really question that. Why are all these soldiers who are in their 30s going into their 40s are trying to get all this stuff documented such early? Because that culture, it did not encourage seeking help. And this is just one small element of just seeking help, as far as going to the hospital. Hey, I got ankle pain, I don't know what's going on, my feet hurt, I don't know what's going on. And that can be, and because we have frowned at, or we're trying to implement or create this tough soldier mentality, it's actually teaching a lot of soldiers, young soldiers and older soldiers, that, hey, this is something I just got to suck up. You get what I'm saying? This is something that I just got to keep on going. And like we say, mission first.
Man, you went so many places that I don't know if I can keep up, man. But everything you said is true, and I'd be curious to hear from other branches of service, because we're speaking mainly from the vantage point of having been in the Army. There's running jokes within all the branches of service about who has it a little easier than the next branch. But once again, according to that study, I think that suicide was actually up in all of the branches of service, which was very alarming. But I'll say this, the military is a microcosm of the world. You have at any given time, me being from Georgia, I could be a roommate with somebody from the middle of Idaho, and so what you have in the military is a reflection of our culture, a very small reflection of our culture. And so I think it's, while the military does in many ways nurture an environment where it's very aggressive, I think we have to be mindful of the fact that as a whole, we're still talking about a people group who have these issues with coping with stress. And so maybe the military does create that perfect storm when now you're introduced to a situation where now all of the pressure is causing you to maybe consider suicide. But I think there's still something to be said about the mental and emotional capacity as a whole of our society. Because once again, our society is the ones who ultimately make up our military. And so if I came into the military lacking those tools to be able to handle stress, then you best believe that the military is going to put me in an environment where I'm probably not going to be best suited to handle the stress. And so, I'm coming at this conversation mainly from the standpoint of I think we need to do a better job with training overall. I think we need to give more attention to the actual, once you come into the military, what does it look like to handle stress? I'm thinking from the vantage point of, when I got out, like I said, I got out in 2012, but, resiliency was the buzzword,
Right.
And resiliency really what it boils down to is your ability to handle stress or your ability to bounce back from difficult situations, right? And so, everybody wants to say, hey, I bounce back real quick and nothing's going to get me down, right? But the reality is that we don't all have the same tool set to handle resiliency. Because once again, if I came up in an environment where I didn't really deal with a lot of pressure, and now all of a sudden I'm thrust in an environment where pressure is all that I deal with on a daily basis, I might not be able to handle it. But the next person who may have came up, say, in a rough environment and, they just kind of learned how to deal with it, they might handle that same pressure differently and maybe better than I did. One of the things I remember very vividly is that I was a young NCO. I got promoted relatively quickly into my career. And, here I am, a young 20-something, and now I'm forced to be like a mentor, a father figure, a counselor. And I didn't have the tool set, the skill set really to speak to a lot of those emotional issues, And so I could tell you that while I believe I gave good advice, I know that there was times when I lacked empathy because I was considering how I would handle it as opposed to this individual. And I didn't always do it with the most compassion either. And the reality is that, hindsight being 2020, I can look back and say, man, I would have handled that a lot differently if that was the situation now. And so while the military, once again, is an aggressive environment, because once again, hey, listen, the military is for defense, to go to war. So they're not really designed for it to be a big kumbaya. You know what I'm saying? You kind of go in there with the expectation, look, if the war jumps off tomorrow, I'm gone. You know what I'm saying? Like, we all go in there with that mindset. But I do think that we need to give attention to overall the mental well-being of our people. There's a great onus on physical strength, but there has to be some consideration to the emotional and the intellectual well-being of a person as well.
Got you. So there's a lot,
man,
that you said that I want to address.
Yeah.
So no, I don't know where I want to start, but number one, so that's part of. I agree with that, and I think there needs to be. I think that training needs to be applied. When I was doing this research and looking into it, I was saying, man, what we do, that's the perfect space that we need to be involved in, because the military is predominantly men. You get what I'm saying? And like we've been saying, it's a masculinity issue. There's a lack of understanding of what masculinity is, and I disagree when it comes down to how the military should be, because it's not working. If folks are, we're not being taken care of. So even with resiliency, that's more so individual focus.
It is. Oh.
So what I'm getting at is when it comes down to the atmosphere.
I got you.
When we say one man, one fight in the military, that should apply in life, not just in wartime. Why is that only applying in wartime? You get what I'm saying? So even though you're going through something, our battle buddies is not equipped, not just to handle it on our own, which really a lot of stuff we shouldn't be able to handle on our own. We're not able to say, hey man, what is going on? Yeah. Just like when we got back from Fort Valley, we don't know how to open up. Not only do we not know how to open up, we're not in a space that encourages that. We're not. Everybody, the average person that we was in the military with, man, we heard the jargon on a regular basis. Oh, yeah. Man up, you acting like a bee, da 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 da. That doesn't encourage anybody to say, hey man, like, bruh, I got these thoughts, man. Like these are weird thoughts. You get what I'm saying? Hold on, real quick. The next thing that I wanna address is, you got so many people who have a misunderstanding of masculinity, a misunderstanding of toughness, a misunderstanding of mental health, a misunderstanding of self-care, a misunderstanding of just your mental well-being. And these individuals who are also our leaders are also facilitating these trainings, our NCOs. Yeah. My experience, can't speak on yours. My experience, a lot of those trainings were a waste of time. If I have a lack of understanding of that level of understanding, there's no way I can facilitate a training on suicide awareness. Yeah. There's no way I can facilitate effectively about opening up and really creating that atmosphere, because if you have that understanding, there's a lot of barriers, mental barriers within that unit that you have to break. And even when you break that, when you attempt to break that, folks ain't gonna look at you the same way. So there's a lot that you're really dealing with when it comes down to this. But when it comes down to the one man, one fight, I think we just have that when it comes down to wartime. And it's because of our lack of understanding. We have to be more encouraging, and we have to have more empathy. The lack of empathy is at an all-time low right now. Yeah. And so many of these guys, even that haven't been deployed, are experiencing this loneliness. You get back, they got relationship issues, right? They got legal issues. They got financial issues. Folks are trying to adjust into the civilian world, and you're trying to adjust with retiring. You don't know what's next. Man, this is all way too much that somebody should not have to handle on their own.
Man, we might have to do a part two. I will say this, Dominique. One of the things that, and I'm considering, once again, my time in service, and I think what's really kind of unique about this particular conversation is that you and I almost represent two different eras in the military. I came in a little after that Desert Storm, so like all of my supervisors, and they were all like the Desert Storm group, and they would always say, hey, you guys are weak, and all of that, and then I, because I came in 97, and so you came in 08, 09. So, there's a 12-year difference. So you're, I'm that post, pre 9/11, and so now you had to post in, and I remember we kind of had that same mindset too, like, yeah, you guys are weak, and so, so it very much is a broken record of kind of repeating that, almost like a hazing type thing. I never really considered it from the vantage point of, being a toxic masculinity issue, because I never looked to the military as a representation of what masculinity meant. And so, maybe that's something I can give attention to, you know, as we proceed in this conversation. But one of the things I will say is that the whole conversation about how we handle mental health and mental illness, I remember how that kind of progressed even in my time. That was not a conversation when I was a young soldier. We weren't having that conversation. The conversation we were having is, hey, if you tell them folks you feel like you crazy, you're gonna hurt yourself, you're gonna lose your clearance. That was the conversation.
Exactly.
And so, nobody, I don't care how depressed you were feeling, you were not trying to lose a clearance. You were not trying to, be that person who couldn't carry your weapon, because, they would take your weapon away from you. And, the next thing you looking at being chaptered out of the military. And so that was the mindset that I came into the military with. Now, towards the end of my career in the military, now it's okay, it's actually safe to talk to somebody. We want to encourage you to talk to somebody. But you have to understand that people have built their careers on finding their own coping mechanisms. You get what I'm saying? And so, you would have a lot of the older guys who were alcoholics, who were probably beating their wives. We had serious domestic violence issues,
Yes.
And so the whole conversation catered around asking my young soldier, are you emotionally okay, was a foreign conversation.
Exactly.
Because nobody was checking on me when I was 18-year-old private, figure it out, suck it up and drive on. And so, what you're having this weird kind of transition where we're not really knowing how to have that conversation, and recognizing at the same time that the conversation needs to be had. And so that's why when I opened up, I talked about the need for some type of training that coming in, and also I think for the young leaders, they need to have this kind of, and I don't know, it may be that way now, in 7 years, these changes may have been adopted, but the reality is that there needs to be some kind of training where you learn the warning signs, and you also learn how to engage with people. The leadership whole dynamic, like I said, when I was coming up, it was mainly about how do you get your soldier to accomplish the task. It was not really about the overall emotional, spiritual well-being of the soldier. The extent of my checking on the soldier is, how's your family? Did you pay your bills? Is there anything going on? And deep down inside, I was hoping that you would say everything's all right.
Right.
Because if you said everything was all right, there's no need to ask any more further pressing questions. And so, so yes, I agree that it is definitely a culture, but it's a culture I really feel that we won't see any substantial changes until we address the mindset around the training and the actual being equipped to have these conversations with the individuals.
Yeah. And I will also add, we have to redefine, just like what we're doing on the show, we have to redefine masculinity. These guys are coming in and thinking, this is what it means to be a man. This is what it means to be masculine. To hold it in, don't talk about it. I got to be big and bad, da da da. And if we can't really, because it's just like you said, society in some way is reflecting what we're seeing in the military. And that's due to our understanding of masculinity, femininity, and so forth. And if we can't break down those barriers, it doesn't matter what we teach them, they're going to resist it. And it's all got to be encompassed, together, because they're just not going to accept it. So I really do believe we got to have more professional. I'm not sure if we have, we have chaplains, but we got to have mental health professionals present in units. And I'm saying that because they have a greater understanding of these issues. They have a greater understanding of facilitating. Because I don't remember a chaplain facilitating certain trainings. That's just that I can only speak for my unit and what I experienced. Because there's too many leaders, and I've heard too many leaders who are spilling out this toxic understanding on just creating this space, this safe space to really open up. You get what I'm saying? And I really do believe that this is really really causing people to not know where to go, because when you're going to the military, you're leaving behind everything. And some of these guys, I just remember being in basic training, because I couldn't relate to a lot of them because I had my family. My parents were sending me letters. My brother was writing me. But some of these guys didn't have anybody writing them. Some of these guys didn't have anybody to call.
Yeah.
That's heavy when you're away from everything. You get what I'm saying? And they're looking at the soldiers around them as their only family. But for some reason, they're family, but I can't go to them like family. You get what I'm saying? And we have to really redefine, we have to include the emotional well-being, because at the end of the day, emotion always play a factor in everything. You get what I'm saying? How you handle and just how you handle the stress, how you handle challenges, how you handle any challenge in life. You're gonna have to understand how to really process what is going on with you mentally and emotionally. And we have to include that, and it needs to begin in basic training and throughout training and so forth. But we got to end soon. I mean, we because we might have to do a part 2, because this is very very heavy. I'm really passionate about this issue because of prior service, because of what I experienced, and it felt some type of way. You get what I'm saying? And it didn't affect me too much because I actually had folks to go to. You get what I'm saying? Some of these people don't have anybody to go to, and that's big, and that's really big. So I think there's something else you wanted to address.
No, I mean, yeah, we definitely need to do a part 2. And like I said earlier, I would be curious to hear the experiences of other service members from their various branches. Because like I said, we're speaking mainly from the position of being veterans by way of the Army. And, I joke with people all the time. It's like, hey, I was attached to the Air Force unit for a year. That was my best. That was my best service, my best year in the military.
Treat me a little different, man.
Yeah, and then after that, they put me in the infantry unit, so it was crazy. So my mind couldn't handle all of that. But
right.
But the reality is that we're talking about mental health professionals, and I like the idea of them being introduced on the front end as opposed to the back end, and I say that from the vantage point of, my experiences with mental health professionals in the service they were a reactive resource. Meaning,
right.
I had a soldier who expressed an interest or desire to hurt himself, and now I have to, jump through all these loops and go through all the channels to get him supported. But, on the front end, if we knew about it, if we were able to have these kind of dialogues early,
right?
I think maybe how the care for that particular soldier would have been a lot different,
right?
And so once again, we don't come on here with all of the answers. Just this is a necessary conversation. I still work with the military population. My occupation. I travel a lot, and I work with our service members, and so these are some very real issues. These are some very real traumas. People are dealing with a lot of pressure, and we're going to have to find a way to bring some kind of relief, or equip people with the tools to handle life. Because in many cases, life has its own unique set of difficulties. And so people need the skills to navigate the difficulties of life.
Most definitely, and I hope you all enjoyed this broadcast. Let us know what else you want us to address and so forth, because like we said beforehand, this is a very, very, very loaded topic and conversation. But hopefully, we are encouraging more conversations and discussions and so forth, and that's what we want to encourage. We always want to bring the tough, sensitive, taboo topics to the forefront, because we're just not having them, and we're not having them enough. So we really appreciate you all's support and love. Please feel free to inbox us, DM us, and email us, info@womenopenup.com. And we have a free course for you as well, eliminating excuses to win in life. And if you are someone who believes that I'm allowing a lot of things just to get in my way, I'm allowing these excuses to be a barrier in my life and reaching these goals that I'm setting for myself, feel free to go to our website and get that free course. It's available for you, and let us know how it works out for you as well. And we are working on some episodes as well. We did one interview, and this is another important conversation we want to start having on our platform. But we want more men to come out and share their experience that have been sexually assaulted as a child, or been molested and so forth. So if you want to share your story, we really want more guys. We want this conversation not just to share their story, but just to really bring this issue to the forefront, because it's still a lot of people that just don't realize how big this issue is. There's a lot of guys who don't quite realize that is something that actually happened to them because of what society has pushed in their minds and so forth. And we also want to further educate people. We want to further educate parents as well, because a lot of our kids are vulnerable, and many of our kids are vulnerable because we tend to be very protective around strangers. But the statistics say that it's happening among family members and people that we know or the child know as well. So that's something that we really want to share on our broadcast. So we're gonna have a few episodes and a few interviews where guys gonna be sharing their story about being molested and so forth. So if you're someone who want to share their story, you may know someone who want to share their story as well, please email us. We are already contacting people. Email us, info@womenopenup.com. We'll schedule a time to talk with you and try to get you scheduled on the show. Anything else you want to share?
No, that's all I have. I just want to say, as always, thank you all for your support. It's greatly appreciated. If you find any value in the content that you're hearing, please feel free to share it with your networks.
Thank you so much. This is When Men Open Up, a show where we are redefining manhood through transparency. My name is Dominique.
And I'm Dexter.
And we are out. Thank you so much for the love and support.